Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about the four P's of creativity of Mel Rhodes. Whether we think of creativity as more related to people, there are creative persons. Whether we judge creativity depending on the product, the final product of the activity defines whether something is creative or not. The press, by that Rhodes was talking about the context, the environment, the surroundings in which the creativity takes place as being elemental in whether we are creative or not. And finally, and this is what we're going to practice in this activity, is creativity as a process, which for researchers, for investigators, for teachers is kind of a much more useful way of thinking about creativity, because it's something that we can do, it's something that we can actually learn how to do. And to do that, what we're going to do is to practice a little bit this process. I'm going to invent a process for us. You're going to upload the results of your creative process into the Padlet, which is underneath this video in the course. Again, as a process, what we're thinking of is doing creativity, and this idea that I have, but I'm not the only one, that we are creative if we do creativity. And when you're researching, when you're carrying out a doctoral thesis, you really do need to work on doing creativity. If not, it's already been done. The first question I'm going to ask us, the first thing I'm going to mention here is you will need for this activity probably your mobile phone to take a photo of the final result, some paper and a pencil, and that's all you're going to need, really. The question I'm going to ask you is really, what did you have today for breakfast? Have a think about this for a couple of seconds. And if you're like me, what you had for breakfast today was a piece of toast. This will be the universal breakfast known the world over, and that probably most people don't have too much of a problem imagining or recreating. So the first activity here that I'm going to ask you to carry out, so you're going to need to pause the video, get your pen and your pencil or your piece of paper ready. I'm going to ask you the question: how do you make toast? What I want you to do is I want you to pause the video, draw your response to the question, how do you make toast, and just draw the picture. That's all. Draw the process, draw whatever. Just draw your response to the question, how do you make toast? How do you make toast? Then upload the picture, or hold on to the picture for a minute, because we'll come back to this. Okay, welcome back. You should by now have drawn your toast, and most people have something which looks a little bit like this. Some people just draw their final piece of toast on the plate. Others will number and connect their toast making process with arrows. Depending on your artistic capacity, your toast process will look something like this. And if I were a psychologist or a psychiatrist, maybe I may start to psychoanalyze your toast. But because that really isn't our objective here, and what we're really interested in is finding out the kind of response you have, keep a record of your toast, and let's go back to this toast. Now, most people, in most of the toasts that I have seen recreated in this activity over 5 years of this activity in classrooms, have one toast in their brains. They have one method of making toast. They tend to use the same bread every day. They tend to put the same topping on top. They tend to use butter or margarine and marmalade or olive oil and ham. But pretty much we have the danger of what we call immediate thinking about toast. I say the word toast, imagine how you're going to make toast, and you say, okay, this is a quick activity, I've got a minute to do this, I must solve the problem, and I will go to the toast that is built into my mental circuitry and I will solve the problem quickly. Now, we said in the previous video that being creative in our thinking is not necessarily thinking fast. Maybe we need to look more carefully, more closely at toast in order to be creative in toast, because if this toast that I make is the same as everyone else's toast, then my toast will have no value in the toast market, especially if I'm trying to expand the world of toast as you're trying to expand your academic world in your subject area. And here maybe we're talking a lot about toast, but the reason we're talking about toast is because it's something that we're not going to question too much. It's something that nobody has a deep emotional attachment to unless you're British. You have an emotional attachment to a particular way of making toast. Immediate thinking here leads to very fast problem solving, and that can be good, but it's not so good when we're trying to do creative thinking. So what we're going to do is we're going to deconstruct toast, and if we deconstruct toast, we may think of three different alternatives. We've got bread, heat, and condiments, the toppings, what we put on top of the toast. So the next phase we're going to use something which is a very grand name of morphological synthesis. It sounds very good. If you go into the Padlet below this, you're going to find 3 columns, and what I'd like you to do is to add as many alternatives as you can to bread. Don't here upload just a list of different breads, because that's kind of lazy thinking. What else could you toast apart from bread? Maybe a croissant, maybe a cake, maybe pizza base, something different that we could substitute bread with for our toast. Alternative sources of heat. The condiments, what we're looking for here is lots of different alternatives, and what we're doing here is we're doing the divergent thinking part of a creative process. We are exploring the possibilities of the thing. We're talking about toast. When you do this with your own work, you need to think about the world in which you are investigating. For some of you that'll be easier, for some of you it'll be more difficult. That's life. Pause the video and add some alternatives. Check out the alternatives that are already there and add your own alternatives to the columns of this morphological synthesis or alternative listing. Okay? Pause the video and do that now. I'll give you 5 minutes to think about that. Okay, that wasn't too difficult, was it? If we go on to the next, imagine you've probably got something. This is in Spanish, because most of the time I do this in Spanish, but you've probably got lists that look a little bit like this. And we probably find in the first column that it's not too difficult to get to originality. In the second column, it's actually quite easy to get to originality because there are less obvious alternatives. Grill, the induction hob, the griddle, the oven, but then we kind of run out of the obvious alternatives, and then we make what we call the creative leap into originality, and we start getting into ovens, a blowtorch, a cigarette lighter, on a volcano, we get quite quickly towards originality, and one of the reasons why we need to explore with lots of alternatives is in creativity we're trying to reach originality. We're not so worried yet about it being useful, but we are worried about it being original at this level. Your lists are imperfect. We could create toasts here by just making random toast connections here, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they would be acceptable pieces of toast for the toast consumers, but they would be creative. And in this phase, the divergent thinking, what we're looking for is that level of creativity, and to do that we need fluency of ideas. Fluency of ideas is what's going to get us to originality in our ideas. This may not be very useful toast though, so the next step that we need to do is what we would call a little bit of convergent thinking, to redesign and reinvent the concept of toast. And I'm going to give you some pointers here, and I'd like you to pause the video again after I've explained these and draw and describe the ingredients for toast for some particular clients and consumers of toast. The first one we need is a COVID-safe toast, for a pandemic toast, if you like, something that's safe to consume at the moment. We'd also might like to think of what would be a hipster, what would be a fashionable, trendy, tendency type of toast. What would be the most Spanish type of toast, or your nationality, wherever you're from? What would be the toast that most reflects your identity, if you like? And if your thesis were a toast, and this is where it gets more complicated, if your thesis were a toast, what would it look like and what would be the ingredients? And that's something I want you to think about, and that is something that I want you to upload. That's a difficult one. Creativity is not taking the easy, obvious path, as Howard Gardner, the multiple intelligence guy, tells us, that taking the creative path is like making a Faustian pact with difficulty. So pause again and draw your toasts and upload them to the Padlet underneath this video. Okay, see you soon. Okay, if you're back, then I imagine that's because you've uploaded your toast. It's probably taken us a little time, but that's because we're practicing the kind of slow thinking that comes with creative problem finding and problem solving. Okay, now then, what have we done and why is this a creative process? We've taken the concept of toast. We've done some divergent thinking to question the ingredients, if you like, of toast. What does toast mean? Well, we've questioned that, and we've opened and explored the possibilities of toast. And then finally we've taken this mess of ideas around toast, and we've done some convergent thinking in order to create new toasts which have nothing to do with the toast that we originally thought of. And that basically is the creative process of any creation, and that really is probably what you are doing, or what you need to do, with your doctoral research, your PhD research. You need to open the concept, you need to fill yourselves with doubt. Doubt is a fine thing in any creative process. If you don't doubt, if you don't question, you're not really going to be generating anything new. And it is kind of a moment which breaks the mold, if you like, of the way we've worked academically. Most of us most of our lives. Possibly we need to question why we're not questioning more and doubting more after the infant school experience, really. Filling yourselves with these doubts, filling yourselves with these questions to get from A to B is what creativity and what creative thinking is pretty much all about. Our creative process in this has followed 5 steps, really. 5 very grand sounding steps for basically making new pieces of toast. But the first thing we did was to visualize, to do some visual thinking about toast. Now, you can do this with a pen and paper, you can do this with Lego, you can do this with plasticine, you can do this with anything that you want, but build it, move it, play with it first, and that way you will see it from different perspectives. I've built poems, the metaphors of poetry, for example, with some of my students, my literature students. I've built metaphors in Lego to explain the poem for my students. It really does help. Your hands and your brain and your eyes are very powerful when they work together, and a lot of academic work is this kind of divorce from your hands. You progressively become more and more a person who lives in their brain. Then we went on to a second step, which was deconstructing toast, to break it down into the elements to see what we could change. Anyone who's doing anything in engineering, anything technical, it's really quite simple to break things down and try different alternatives. We then explored those alternatives, we made some new combinations, and we finally designed for some particular users of toast. Okay, and that helps us really, because all of your research, all of your investigations in the end are going to affect the lives and of somebody in your area of work, in your academic area. It's very difficult to see this at the moment, but we really should be thinking of what will be the end result and who is going to benefit from my research. Okay, I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to upload this, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes for another one.